Hi friends, I am Julia, and today we are going to talk about an aspect of GMAT critical reasoning that I personally find very rewarding to improve on and to master. That is interpreting multi-layered logic. These are not the critical reasoning questions with very obvious flaws that you can spot almost immediately. These are the questions that present arguments that work through several steps or assumptions. Your job is to track how each piece connects, make sure everything that you think is implied is actually supported, and put the pieces together. Let's dig into how to break these down without getting overwhelmed by the subtlety of logic. Multi-layered logic shows up when an argument relies on more than just a fairly simple leap or assumption. It might involve a causal claim plus an assumption about decision making or something else. It could involve a comparison that is not very well supported that's used to support some other hypothesis. It could be a plan or prediction based on multiple necessary assumptions, any of which could go wrong. These questions often feel simple on the surface, much like any critical reasoning question might feel simple on the surface, but once you start pulling the threads, you realize how complicated they actually are. Here is a step-by-step guide to working through them. Step 1, find your conclusion. Start by asking, what is the author trying to convince me of? Is there some plan that they think is going to have some outcome? Did they get some information and now they think that one event is leading to another, or whatever they may be trying to convince you of? Step 2, find the supporting evidence. That's probably the rest of the argument. Identify what the author is using to support their conclusion. These are your premises or background information. On the GMAT, we always take them as true. And step 3, consider the assumptions the author has made in getting from their supporting evidence to their conclusion. What must be true for the argument to work? What are they clearly assuming? The more complex the logic, the more likely there are multiple layered assumptions. Once you have your breakdown, you're ready to test the implications of answers. Let's look at an example. Last year, Brilliant Broadcasting doubled from the amount that it spent the year before, the amount of money that it spent to advertise to potential viewers its hit television show, Who Wants to Win the Most. All the same, television rating services indicated that the average number of people who watched Who Wants to Win the Most each week last year was virtually unchanged from the average number who watched the show each week the year before. Nevertheless, Brilliant Broadcasting executives maintained that the increase in advertising spending paid off. Let's look at a breakdown of this argument following our 3-step plan. So step 1, our conclusion, the increase in advertising spending paid off. Step 2, how are we supporting that? Well, the network doubled their advertising budget for their hit show last year. That's a little bit of background information. Yet the average number of people who watched their show each week last year was virtually the same as it was for the year before, when their budget was half as big. Step 3, potential assumptions. Viewer numbers might have declined without the increase in advertising, so keeping them level could be a good thing. There could be other benefits of advertising that don't involve increasing average weekly viewership. Perhaps the show is important or relevant in some other way, so that even though the viewership didn't increase, supporting it or advertising it more helps in some other way. The show's value or profitability may depend on things besides weekly viewer numbers, or the advertising achieved what it was supposed to achieve. For all we know, the whole point of the advertising was to give this CEO's son something to do, a good practice project. And they did that, and they don't really care about viewer numbers at all. So that is some potential assumptions for why, even though the increase in advertising didn't seem to lead to an increase in weekly viewers, the execs still feel that the increase paid off. Let's look through our answer choices and test them for some implications. A. Last year, 2 other major broadcasting companies began airing shows that were essentially thinly disguised but well-produced copies of Who Wants to Win the Most. Okay, what might this imply? It could be the case that these shows might have taken some of the viewership share from Who Wants to Win the Most, but because of their increase in advertising, they didn't end up losing viewership share. So that could be a reason that the network executives feel that the advertising spending paid off. B. Brilliant Broadcasting makes past episodes of Who Wants to Win the Most available for online viewing. This is interesting because at first it might seem like this is potentially another way that people are viewing the show so that there could be an increase in viewership, but it only says that they make past episodes available, and it doesn't really say if anyone is watching them, so we don't really know if the average viewer numbers per week include this or not. We don't know if this is just background information without knowing that it's clearly a way to resolve this paradox we find ourselves in. It's not really helpful. C. Who Wants to Win the Most was Brilliant Broadcasting's most popular show last year. This kind of gives a reason why they might choose to spend more on advertising, but it doesn't really give us a reason for why they feel that this doubled advertising budget was successful. So it doesn't really strengthen the exec's claims. D. Last year, the percentage of people who knew what time of day Who Wants to Win the Most comes on was greater than the percentage who knew the previous year. So this kind of implies that people are seeing the advertisements, and that could be a good thing if there was something in this choice that made it seem like more people seeing the advertisements was having some positive effect that the execs would be celebrating. But I don't know that people simply knowing what time the show comes on is enough to justify doubling your ad budget without any other context. So this one doesn't quite strengthen the claim. And E. The numbers provided by the television rating services are not exact counts of viewers, but rather estimates based on samples. Notice that this is not different. This has always been the case. There was no difference in the accuracy, so far as we know, of the numbers provided from 2 years ago and the numbers provided from last year. So this is not something that is different. It can't really explain our paradox. Our best choice is A. Given the topic of the video, you're probably not surprised that this is a question that is well served by considering implications of the answer choices. But what if you run into a new question and I didn't describe what was going to happen for several minutes before? Here are some tips that can help you spot a question that might require more complex logical reasoning than an average question. So, first important clue that you might be dealing with multi-layer logic. No obvious answers. At first glance, none of the answers seem like a solution to obvious assumption gaps. The assumption gaps aren't super obvious. This is going to be your best sign that the question is on the more difficult side, because if you look through the answers and you don't pick out any immediately, it's going to take a little bit more work than an average question. Sign 2, lots of support, a lot of supporting evidence. Every extra bit of information that the author chooses to include in their argument adds more room for complexity. It might seem counterintuitive because you might feel like more support makes the argument tighter, but honestly, that is rarely the case. Every extra premise opens the door for some other complex factors to be factored in. And 3, a shift in the evidence. So our example had a paradox in the middle of it. It had a lot of things going on. It shifted in the middle, and that is a sign that things are just not going to be straightforward in this problem. If you come across any of these or any combination, do not rush through the problem. Slow down and trace the logical chain for a potential missing link until you have found it. Multi-layered logic questions reward sharp, patient thinkers, but they do not require unique or special skills to solve. They are difficult because there are steps, but they are the same steps that you have been doing. They just require a clear understanding of the implications of the argument and of the answer choices. So these problems can be worked through methodically, just like more simple questions. They just add a couple of steps, and so it takes a little bit longer. Until next time, good luck on your studies. You have got this under control.